Welcome to Was It Good, a podcast that talks about movies and TV shows. I'm your host, Arjuna. Normally, I'm joined by my two brothers, Krishna and Ravi, but they decided they didn't want to show up because today we are talking about Bridgerton Season 3. I'm joined by
Lauren and Sahara. And we
are Was It Good?
Was It Good?
Totally
Yeah,
ruined it.
I did. I'm sorry.
We were going to
I'm
be
new
so
to
much
this.
better.
I know. Well, at least we're cuter.
Damn right. Am I allowed to curse?
We
I'm
can
asking my
curse in this
husband,
pod.
Like,
We
I'm
can,
asking Ravi, like he
we-
doesn't curse 24/7 in it.
Yeah, they all
we-
do.
we can do whatever we want. You know, this is our podcast now. Krishna and Ravi are out. Sahara and Lauren are in, and so we're now in charge. So we're talking about Bridgerton Season 3, like I said at the top, the latest season of Netflix's big hit. It's big rom-dram hit, whatever you wanted to describe it as. And let's just get right into it. Normally we start this show off with a one-word impression, and Sahara, Lauren, you are both new to the podcast, so we're just gonna go right in order like we normally do. So normally what we do for these one-word impressions, we quite literally give our one-word impression of the show. So who would like to start? You know what, Sahara, let's start with you. Sahara, what is your one-word impression for Season 3 of Bridgerton?
I've thought about this all day, and I think I'm going to go with a word I'm declaring is one word and not two, and that's screen time. So I feel like for this season, the screen time was split up between like a ton of different characters that we haven't really had in the first two seasons. And I feel like Penelope and Colin didn't get enough screen time together. So that really left an impression on me. So that's why my one word impression is screen time. One word.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There was a lot of there was a lack of focus sometimes with this season, right? The first two seasons really did a strong job of following the two children of the Bridgerton clan that it did. The oldest daughter in the first season, I forget her name, and then Anthony
Daphne.
Bridgerton, the oldest.
Daphne.
Daphne, thank you very well. She wasn't in this season, we forgot all about her. And as
That's
the show
fair.
did as well. And then Anthony in season 2. This season, Colin was obviously the Bridgerton that we followed, but Sahara, like you said, there was a lot of Francesca in it. There was a lot of Benedict in this one as well. Eloise who's always been kind of a big part of the seasons, was also a relevant part as well. The youngest two continue, Hyacinth and I forget what the youngest son's name is as well. Gregory continue to get ignored, but that's fine. We'll have to eventually learn to know who they are at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we even got like her mom. Her mom had a ton of screen time. Like their mom, the Bridgerton mom, Violet, got a lot of screen time this season, and it was just really spread out. It was crazy. It was interesting.
Lauren, what's your one-word impression for Bridgerton Season 3?
I'm going to say awkward because
Oh,
I agree. It felt very awkward as a viewer with multiple storylines. It was also just a lot of the storytelling felt awkward to be watching, and then awkward in the sense of what, like, and I haven't read the books, but I look at social media way too much of the awkward twist that they did and how people were feeling about it. And yeah, just like awkward.
are you talking about the Francesca at the end of the season, kind of being interested in her husband's cousin?
Yeah, she's like literally, it's like her wedding night or the day after or something, and all of a sudden she like awkwardly is in love with this chick. I think the Benedict storyline was awkward.
The Benedict storyline, I'm sure we're gonna get into this, but it was so awkward, especially because they like erased his whole like bi-curious sexuality from the first season and just like pretended it didn't happen when he was reintroduced to like a threesome. It was really weird.
But then all of a sudden it came back. Like it was even really awkward for me watching like Colin and Penelope. Like, it didn't feel like there was chemistry. Like there was,
Yeah.
in their press tour, there was a lot of chemistry. On like the show itself, it was just like awkward to watch.
Yeah, they
Like,
definitely had better chemistry, like in all of the press tours and on socials than they actually did as Colin and Penelope.
yeah.
Like Luke and Nicola, I root for them, but I don't know. I don't know about Penelope and Colin.
Yeah, I think two things that both of you brought up. I mean, specifically with Benedict, I feel like they just haven't known what to do with that character, right? I think it was season 2, or maybe it was season 1, where he had the whole storyline about art school and how it turned out
Yeah.
Antony was the one that like got him in, and then he left. And they really just dropped his whole push for being an artist. So it feels like there's almost a restart with that character in particular every season. And again, we're definitely going to get into this, but I think for Colin and Penelope, the thing that didn't work in their favor for this season was they just didn't have that many scenes together. It felt like that, but they spent most of the season apart, and like Colin was in his like office writing angrily, and Penelope was doing. There was a lot of the Lady Whistledown plot line that I felt like Penelope had to deal with, especially in the second half of the season, especially after they got together. So I feel like their romance kind of suffered because of that. It almost felt like the attention wasn't there when it needed to be. While, I think in comparison, season 2 with Antony and Miss Sharma, that whole season is about this like palpable tension between between them as the show is going on, this kind of love-hate relationship, enemies to lovers trope, if you will, as they're very much enemies for most of it, but they have this spark and this chemistry, and they didn't necessarily do that for this one. So I think that's a great point.
Okay, they were very awkward in this season too. It was just like trying to tell too much, or maybe trying to tell stories that didn't need to be told and felt very forced. Yeah. But yeah, it just all felt like I'm like doing the like awkward, uncomfortable, like ADHD hands of like I don't know what to do. Like, but Arjuna, what was your one-word impression?
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. I appreciate you asking me what my one-word impression is. My one-word impression is going to be choppy. And the reason I'm going to say choppy is because I think, much like the points that you made, Lauren, and you've made, Sahara, with both of your points, there was a lot of the season didn't flow very well. I think part of that may be because this was the first Bridgerton season to be broken up into 2 parts, right? The first 4 episodes dropped in May, then the next 4 episodes kind of dropped in June. I have a point later in the show. We're going to get into that, but I do think that was a mistake in some ways. I think we lost some of the momentum from the first 4 episodes, and it didn't even seem like, every time a Bridgerton season comes out, it seems like it's this big type of event on social media. And it felt like that for the first part of the season, but it didn't feel like that for the second half, right? It kind of came and went in June, and it didn't seem like people really talked about it. So, and I think, again, for the aforementioned reasons that you've both kind of stated about the characters, the screen time, the multiple directions the story's kind of being pushed into. My other contender for my one-word impression was like IP, because this very much felt almost like a Marvel project or a big kind of IP project, or like The Boys is a great example. The Boys loves to make fun of the kind of major IP thing, but it's also becoming what it's making fun of, with multiple spin-offs and all these different mouths you have to feed with the different types of projects you're trying to do. And it almost feels like Bridgerton's going that way. Like, doesn't it feel like at the end of the season they could do 3 spin-offs if they wanted to? Like, they could do Antony and Miss Sharma in India, and they could do Eloise in Ireland or Scotland or wherever she went. And it just feels like they're trying to build this kind of like universe, and I think the story has suffered from that greatly. And I think because we've had so much of that content out there right now, where you have to really invest, and there's these multiple spin-offs and TV shows and movies and whatnot. People want something that's just kind of like, yeah, this is my Bridgerton, and I come to it every year, every 2 years, and it's romantic and it's fun. And I think they're just trying to get a little too cute with it. I don't know. What do you both think?
It did work with Queen Charlotte. I mean,
Yeah.
that was their spinoff, and I still believe that's my favorite Bridgerton season, Bridgerton, like whatever you want to call it. Like Queen Charlotte, how they did that was perfection. It didn't feel forced. I like that it actually ended up connecting to this season, and that was just really well done. And I think it could be interesting to see them go to different places, like have that year gap that they had between this season and season 4, or like honestly the end of the last episode of season 3 where they jumped a year, like Penelope already had her kid. I'd like to go back and see what happened in that time when Eloise was abroad. And this, spoilers in a way, I haven't read the books, but I know kind of what happens a little bit. But like with what's her face, Francesca and her new husband and the cousin, I want to see where that kind of connection lies, because if we're jumping a year ahead already, I wonder what we're going to miss and how they're actually going to connect that love story. So I actually wouldn't mind them branching out of this traditional Bridgerton like IP.
I was gonna say it's, Arjuna, to your point, it's unfortunate how it feels now, because I agree. Like Queen Charlotte was a great spin-off of an existing franchise that, I actually had this conversation earlier around Star Wars. It's, if you watched it, great, it adds depth, but like there's only like one little storyline, or like even just one scene that in season 3 of Bridgerton that referenced the whole, like, Violet's dad and Lady
Right.
Danbury. And it was like, but had you not watched Queen Charlotte, it didn't take away from the story at all. Where now it feels there's just too many different like splinters that could come from it. And it's either lead into the current time with, and follow what they did for 1 and 2, or backstories. But I don't necessarily want to see what's happened in the past year, because they're like, we time jumped, this is where it is. Like, you already know the outcome, versus kind of, again, that like Queen Charlotte, you didn't know all of that with George, like, ahead of it. So
Yeah, I think what's interesting in doing some research on the books is at least how the show has gone so far, right? It is consecutive years. It's basically every wedding season for these first 3 seasons. There are bigger time jumps in the books. I believe, Sahara, you pointed this out to me. In the book, I believe Penelope is like 28, 29 by the time her story comes along, so she's considered like a spinster. She's been in the wedding
Yeah, she's
season market
been in
for
the
many,
taunt.
many
Yeah.
years. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
right?
not
Like
just
they're
like her
coming out
third
at like 16,
season.
17. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. I do wonder if they'll start to do some time jumps. They if the actress that played Francesca, for example, they recast. Part of that was timing with the other actress, and then the other part is they actually wanted to age up the actress because they knew they wanted to do more with her character. I do wonder if they start to do that with some of these younger actors too. To try and maybe get them a little bit older so they can start doing their stories at different times. Be interesting to
Mhm.
see. But you both mentioned Queen Charlotte, and I want to jump right in actually to her storyline with this season, right? The Queen has always been kind of this playful, antagonistic force within the show, right? Where her main thing has obviously been she's really interested in the ton and the wedding season. First season's all about the diamond and who's getting married and all that stuff. She obviously takes a big interest in season 2. Lady Whistledown has obviously been her big storyline, Penelope. That came to a head this season, and I wanted to get your thoughts on how you felt that went down, right? The show obviously ends with, or the season ends with Penelope being outed as Whistledown and everything kind of being okay. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you felt that reveal went and how you felt the Queen reacted to it. Sahara, I'll start with you. How did you feel like that went down?
I honestly felt it was a bit lackluster. I thought there was going to be a little bit more scheme. I thought that Penelope and the Queen would have, like, when it was happening, when it was unfolding, I was watching, I was like, oh, maybe behind the scenes, Penelope met up with the Queen and they conceived this plan to make it seem like the Queen got her way, where Penelope can still kind of do what she wants to do. The Queen looks good to the taunt and everything kind of goes on happy, jolly, merry. But that didn't actually happen, and it just felt like the queen didn't necessarily react how I was expecting her to react. I was expecting more emotion. I didn't think it would get wrapped up so quickly. Like, it was just one little speech and boom, okay, I accept it. That's fine. So I just thought it was very lackluster and not what I would have expected. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, talking about Queen Charlotte, I thought like the humanity they showed with her character didn't necessarily connect to the character we're still getting in Bridgerton. I was hoping there'd be more depth there. Lauren, what did you think?
No, it was, I think, again, going just to the overall season and being awkward, there was all this drama around, oh my God, what's going to happen when Colin finds out, Penelope's whistle down. And then it was like, oh, okay, that happened. We're moving on. Like, it was, multi-episode arc of this villain, so to speak. And then, yeah, to Sarah's point, it's like, oh, I made the speech, and by the way, now we're going to put butterflies and call it a day, and everybody's happy. And it just, they developed such a strong character and backstory with Queen Charlotte and like who this woman was, and to have it be so like superficial and does really a disservice to what Queen Charlotte did, where it was just this woman who kind of is like, this is my my battle in life, and then, oh, okay, yeah, I'm moving on.
I did find it weird that Colin's, like, the way Colin turned around on Penelope was like he just reread some of the letters and he's like, "You are Whistledown. I love you." I was like,
it's because he found that she had the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that whole thing was just so weird. Like, the whole misogyny of it. I get like the times and stuff, but I mean, like, you have a female ruler. Like, your queen is your symbol. So it seems so weird for him to like all of a sudden be like really sexist in that way, and then still accepting her, but then being like, I need to write my own book so I feel good about myself and to feel like a man because she can't be the only breadwinner author thing. I can do that too. And I don't know. This season was supposed to make me love Colin, and I ended up like really disliking him by the very end.
Yeah, like the first part of the series or season is him trying to be this like super macho, like masculine, like, oh, I sleep with prostitutes,
yeah, a little womanizer,
like, women across, yeah. And then the whole thing was like, no, embrace your like sensitive side, and that's when he went, propose with Penelope, and then 2 minutes later, it's like, no, you can't, like, I have to take care of you again. It just was, that was not who he was.
Yeah.
And again, it felt very like a floppy ending to this, basically 2 episodes of, oh my God, we have to tell Colin and Eloise and all of that like drama to just be like, yeah.
And then even in the end, like, the title of his book was like Traveling Alone, or like My Travels Alone, and it clearly was alluded that he wrote about all of his like sexual like encounters and things like that because his little brother was reading it. He's like, aren't you a little young to be reading this? It's like, pick who you are. Like, who are you, Colin? Like, what do you care about? Like, are you like, I don't know, I can't stand Colin.
They just feel like a couple. If this was 2024, they would be divorced in like a year and a half. Like, it just doesn't feel like that they're of the 3 couples, right, that there are. I mean, I think all of these couples probably have major issues, but this couple in particular feels like one that just wouldn't last. And I do kind of wonder if Bridgerton's going to go down that route with any of their characters of like, is there going to be really a happily ever after for all of them? And maybe this is a good pivot point actually to get into Anthony and Miss Sharma, because this kind of continues, I think, a trend that we've seen with the first 2 seasons of the show, when they don't know what to do with these couples and these characters once they get married, right? They really have no idea. Like, I think now we're 3 seasons in, and everyone was obviously really upset when Regé decided not to come back after season 1. But that was a brilliant move on his part because they don't know how to write these characters at all. And I do kind of wonder now if they kind of pitched him something. He's like, this sounds terrible. I'm good. I did my one thing. And, like Anthony, just to recap for the audience, Anthony and Miss Sharma were heavily publicized in this season as being kind of main characters. Even after the season, they made a specific point to say these characters will return and be major parts of this universe going forward. They even made a big deal of saying like, yeah, Miss Sharma, is going to kind of take over Violet's role as the matriarch of the Bridgerton family. And then these characters are in 3 episodes of the 8,
Barely.
But I'm
and are
okay with
absent.
that.
I am too, but I just don't want to be sold. I don't want to be sold something else and then something
we
else
were
to
led
completely
on.
happen too. And
Well, I think
I just think it's just weird from a character perspective, right? Where Anthony is just absent for his sister's wedding, right?
Yeah, he missed
he's not there for
Francesca's whole
Francesca's wedding. He's not there for like many of these nights where Colin is struggling and going to the bar. He's only there with kind of Benedict and stuff. And I think it's just very clear that they don't know what they're doing with these characters. Lauren, we'll start with you. What do you think that they should just stop even pretending to like have these characters going forward and just write all of them out as their love stories kind of end?
Well, it's always like when you watch like high school rom-com and at the end, they get together and it's like, okay, but show us the next version where it's like senior year and they, are not together and fighting. And it's like, I like what season 1, to Daphne was in like half of one episode. Like they mentioned her and that was about it. The whole idea with Bridgerton and the Bridgerton family, they keep trying to be like, oh, we're so close to each other, but it just feels very like forced. And then then you have like Benedict who's having his whole weird personal crisis too. But and maybe it's me, but I'm pretty like all of a sudden it felt she was very like Indian again. And like her like all of a sudden it's like her accent comes out at like the weirdest like times.
Yeah.
And then like all her gowns all of a sudden became very like sorry, like inspired again. And I guess reading some like Elite Daily article, they were saying like, yeah, like it's now like a white costume designer for season 3 and like there's this whole cultural appropriation thing. But again, it just was like, what are we doing with them? They don't need to be here. They make it awkward. Kind of just be like, thanks, you were season 2, goodbye. We're moving to new characters. We can mention them. Because if anything, a lot of the discourse I saw around it was not that, commentary on the show. It was people complaining of like, the timeline doesn't make sense because she would be giving birth on the boat, like trying to go to India. Like, why would anybody think that's a good idea? It was just very, again, awkward.
It just felt like very flimsy writing with, like having them just like, Anthony's like, let's go to India. Like, let's do it. That makes a lot of sense. It's just like very telegraphed and wrong. Sahara, with this trend and how it's going, do you think Colin and like Penelope should just be written out of season 4, or is Penelope too important in her role as Lady Whistledown to really be like fully written out?
I mean, I haven't read the books either, but I can't imagine this show without Lady Whistledown. So I feel like Penelope, it's impossible for her to be written off. But I do think there are other characters that can be written off, but probably not for the next season. I mean, I'm sure Kate and her man will be gone, Anthony, because they're literally gone in India. But I think we still have to finish off Benedict. We still have to finish off Eloise. Francesca still has more going on. So I don't think that any of these major characters that have had plot points in season 3 are going to be written off in season 4. Though I think they all should be after they get their little spotlight and their little fairy tale ending. But yeah, that's my thinking.
But Penelope, like at the end of season 3, basically killed Whistledown when she's like, so I'm saying, goodbye. And now I'm starting and like signing things as Penelope Bridgerton.
Right.
True. Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot she did a rebrand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think that'll still play a role in season 4 and in future seasons. Because, like, what's the queen gonna care? I mean, yeah, actually, what is the queen gonna care about now that she has discovered Lady Whistledown?
So I was trying to Google it, but I can't multitask. I swear I read somewhere that in the original books, the queen dies in
Oh.
the same arc as Penelope because she died in 1816 in real life, and the season or the show started 1810 or something, and so that's where it's they just gave us Queen Charlotte and everybody really loves her. Now you're gonna kill her off,
Dang,
so I'm glad they didn't do that. I was waiting for that. But yeah,
they couldn't. We love her.
I really hope they take a look at season 3 and the feedback and actually, and they said it's going to be 2 years before the next season, but address some of the concerns because it very much being a Shonda production has become Grey's Anatomy, where the first couple years it was just McDreamy and Meredith, and that was kind of you had the little side stories, but then by season 4 or 5 there was 18 different couples and storylines, and you couldn't keep track of it, and you were just overwhelmed and just lost interest. There wasn't one couple to ship. You all of a sudden were well, I don't know if I ship them, or I don't have enough attention for it all. And the storyline and the show absolutely, I think, suffered. Granted, it's been on for 20 years at this point, but
as will Bridgerton.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to narrow it down significantly. This season, I feel had the most different storylines going on. Why do we even care about Penelope's sisters at all? I don't care about them and their weird husbands and their weird relationships and stuff. There were so many unnecessary storylines that I really hope for the next season they trim that down because it was unnecessary.
Yeah, I actually want to get into some of the non-Bridgerton storylines. We've talked a lot about them, and even actually one that we haven't talked about yet. There was Violet. So Violet, the mom, had a storyline this year, kind of falling in love with Lady Danbury's brother Marcus. There's a whole very strange kind of subplot with them of having kind of this disagreement that just came down to they had one conversation, everything was good.
It's the Bridgerton way.
They had this romance, which is, again, it's a little strange because Lady Danbury was in love with Violet's mother, and so now she's going to get with her brother. It's a very shared family at this point. So we had that storyline. Cressida took on a huge role this season. She was a huge part of this season. Francesca's new BFF, and then she wanted to take on the role of Lady Whistledown, and then was kind of exiled out of the Ton by the end of it. The Featheringtons, as you mentioned, Sahara, were again a big part. Both Prudence and Philippa were a big one, as was their mother Portia. Took on a big role, which I understand. This was Penelope's season. Her family was going to come more in the forefront, and it felt like a lot of the work they did in the first 2 seasons with the dad being a gambler and then being killed for his gambling after season 1, and then the kind of scam that her and her cousin, the cousin Jack, kind of underwent in season 2 to get their fame back. But the disappointing part of that was, again, it was hand-waved of Penelope being like, well, I'm rich, so, this is where your fortune comes from. So that storyline does feel a little wrapped up. And then the other one was the Mondrich family. Will Mondrich was introduced in season 1 as the
Duke
Duke's best friend, and he was a boxer. Then he won a bunch of money. He opened up a tavern in season 2, which was cool to see. I thought that was a cool and a small storyline that they had to see this guy kind of come up. And now all of a sudden they're royalty, and he has to sell it, and that just feels like another storyline similar to Benedict, where they just don't know what they're doing. They're just we're just going to keep changing where this guy is going and making him a bigger part than he necessarily we have story to tell. And again, I don't know if there's a long Kong here or a long-term plan here. They're just let's keep coming back to this character or not. But Sahara, I'll start with you. Which of these non of the main Bridgerton family, like which of these storylines stuck out to you in a good or bad or both ways?
Um, the one that actually like I still think about and I think is actually kind of fun is Violet with Marcus. I like that she gets a little lovin'. I like that she gets her little time. I like that it was related to like her bestie Lady Danbury. I love a good messy dynamic. Like, yeah, my best friend hooked up with my dad, so now I'm gonna hook up with her brother. Like I love the Kardashians. I love those weird like trashy shows and like weird family dynamic. I love the incest and Game of Thrones and stuff like that. Like give me the messiness.
I'm
I
sorry,
think it's
what?
fun. It's fun. It's really
I
fun.
love the
I just think it's
incest.
messy. In the show. I love the incest in the show, not I love incest.
Clip that out.
But no, it's actually fun. I think it's memorable. I love that that's the point where we had the connection between this show and Queen Charlotte. I think that's really great, and it's actually the one storyline that I still think about today. Whereas you brought up, Will Mondridge, and I, as you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. Like his storyline should have died when the Duke of Hastings left town. Like when they don't do anything with him, he's not really a friend of the family. Like he's just kind of around, and there's just no point to his character and their family anymore. I think they just wanted another aspect of diversity on the show, but if they're not going to give it the proper time or the proper writing to like actually make it a fruitful story, then they just need to cut it. Just trim the fat. But what do you think, Lauren?
Yeah, I was gonna say that storyline. I think it dropped like halfway through again with that like mid-season split, but it felt almost repetitive to Lady Danbury's story in Queen Charlotte, where all of a sudden, like you have a Black family being given a title and all of this stuff and how like they react with it. But yeah, it was very, or what do they call it? The experiment?
Yeah.
The great experiment? Or, yeah, like.
Yeah, the experiment.
Again, I completely forgot who they were until I was reading the outline. I was like, oh yeah, that whole thing. Unnecessary. The Violet thing, I'm uncomfortable with it. Only because I think it's like she's such like that mom character. And in Queen Charlotte, she talks about like her garden like is blooming or something, referring to like her horniness. And so then like now like knowing she's gonna get some, I'm like, no,
Don't
like
you love the mess? It's messy.
no, I know. See, I hate reality shows. Like, I hate the mess. Like, I am a like put a nice bow over it. Like, an OG shipper. That's what I like.
I want a Love Island version of Bridgerton.
No.
Give me the mess.
But that's almost to that point. Like, feels what this season was trying to do. It like almost deliver in like pop culture aspects from other genres and putting it all in one show.
I mean, that could have been a result of the new showrunner. Like this was switched, and I think a lot of people could see the difference between this season and the first two.
Yeah, like it didn't have that polish or that suspension of like it was very. Yeah, you could be watching the English old-fashioned version of Love Island.
Yeah. There's a new bombshell in the villa. It's Marcus Danbury.
I mean, speaking of the pop culture stuff, we got to talk about the music, right? Music has obviously been a big part of Bridgerton since it started. It was a popular part of the show when it first came out. People loved the classical covers they had. What did you both think of the music in this season? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Did anything stand out? Yeah, whoever would like to start. You know what? I'll start. I haven't started with myself. It was kind of lackluster. I didn't really recognize. I'm bad with music, as you both know well. And I really didn't recognize many songs, and it also felt like that there weren't as many covers as there have been in previous seasons. I didn't feel like it was as big of a part of the show. Like Queen Charlotte, as you both have mentioned, was both of your favorites. I also really liked Queen Charlotte. that also had a ton of music, like a lot of music. There were a lot of balls in that. Very few balls in this season, just more like brooding and moodiness from like certain characters, and I feel like that was a missing part of the show. What do you both think?
Yeah. No, I agree. The music was again lackluster. It's so hard to come off of Queen Charlotte. It had a phenomenal soundtrack. Queen Charlotte gave us Beyonce, we got SZA, we had Whitney Houston, we even had Alicia Keys. Like, we got such iconic music from Queen Charlotte, and to come to this and we get like Nick Jonas, like some Sia, Gail, like just like I don't know, like random trendy like pop artists right now. Like it just didn't have any emotion to it. Like it just felt like these are songs that we could get, these are popular artists, and let's just throw those in there. But they didn't have like a good connection, a good tie-in. So I was disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, literally at your wedding, I texted Sahara of like Bridgerton music, like, or, appreciation text of the Bridgerton music that played during your wedding, because it was very iconic. And it was only, I think, in the last episode that they played that kind of OG Bridgerton like theme song almost.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, none of it was that like Ariana Grande from season 1 that was just so recognizable, and that gave like goosebumps when hearing like the orchestra version. Like it was all just, and if it was popular music, it made me feel old that I didn't recognize most of it. Like,
a lot of it was like
Taylor
TikTok
Swift song.
music.
I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but like
Taylor Swift at the wedding.
Yeah, other than that, it was.
It felt like,
it was.
Yeah. It felt like for this season, the first 2 seasons in Queen Charlotte, it felt like they picked the music that they really wanted to emphasize those scenes. And for this season, it felt like they just kind of took whatever they could get. It almost feels like that kind of behind the scenes production part of, they know the songs they want. They're having their legal team go out and get it. And this time it was like the legal team came to them and they're like, here are the 10 songs you can choose from. These are the ones that you can kind of use. And it felt like it suffered from that. It didn't feel like it was an emphasis point of the show. It felt like an afterthought of the show.
Yeah,
And
it didn't create any moments.
Really reflected it. Yeah.
And I remember like season 1, the songs that were playing, the actual like name of the song and the lyrics were applicable to what you were saying for the most part. Where again, it was, I had no idea what the song was. So if there was, a deeper message, totally over my head. And I agree, Arjuna. It's like they blew their production budget on too many storylines that they didn't have enough to license, the proper music.
Yeah, they only had like a couple of songs. Like the one song that stands out that actually kind of played into it was when they did Jealous by Nick Jonas, when Penelope came in with Lord Debling and Colin saw her. And I was like, oh, okay, that's like fitting. It seems like there was some intention behind this music choice, but like everything else, like why are we playing Sia? Why are we playing Pitbull and Neo? Like I like it. I like having the orchestral versions, but like it was irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know Pitbull.
Sure.
I think like there was an article of like his daughter or something heard it, and like he was surprised and he didn't realize like they had made the deal to do it or something, and it was you would not expect Pitbull in Bridgerton.
Yeah. Mr. Worldwide,
Mr. Worldwide. Speaking of Pitbull, right? He's obviously very higher up in the hierarchy. But one thing, Sahara, I know you've done a little research into this. I want to turn it over to you. There's a lot of different titles in Bridgerton, right? There are dukes, there are lords, there are kings and queens. What is the hierarchy within Bridgerton, right? Like,
guys, I came prepared.
You've done a little research into the different a little visual.
I am prepared, guys. Welcome to Bridgerton School of Hierarchy, Title Rankings, Nobility. So, at the very top, we obviously have kings and queens, Queen Charlotte, King George. Then we have prince and princesses, first season, the guy that, what's her name? Wow, I really do not care about the
Daphne.
first sister. Yeah.
Daphne?
The guy that Daphne, the Prince of Prussia.
Guys, do you know how to remember them?
They're in order of alphabetical, right?
Yeah, they're
like
ABC. Yeah, it's
Bridgerton.
ABCD.
Yeah. So, yeah, anyway, well, Daphne could have married the Prince of Prussia, and she would have had a higher standing, but instead she decided to marry the Duke of Hastings, so she's now the Duchess, which is the third tier here. Then we have the Marquess and Marchioness, and that is, did we have a Marquess this year?
I think
thought
it's
we
season
did, but I
one
might
or
have
two,
forgotten.
right?
Yeah, maybe season 1 or 2. But then we have the Earl, who is John Sterling, who Francesca married. And then we have the Viscount, Viscountess, which is the whole Bridgerton clan. Then we have Baron, Baroness, which is Penelope's family. And then the title lists like Marina Thompson, basically from season 1, and anyone that doesn't have a title. And a lot of people are like, what are lords and ladies? And that's just basically like saying like sir or madam to people who are like not necessarily like having a title. So you can call pretty much anyone a lord or a lady. It is.
Because you are speaking to a lady. It has to do with land ownership. So like,
okay.
And in, you know, I was gonna say olden times, but like the amount of land that you had, it normally would come with an estate, and then that estate would actually include like a village, and so you would be like the lord of, you know, this town, and people would pay like to live there basically, or, you know, if you think of like serfdom and all of that stuff. But yes, please change my name to
lady. Yeah.
Lady Lauren.
Lady
I like that.
I'm looking
but
at our
even in
producer.
this, like,
Lord,
but even in this show, I mean,
our
that would be
Lord
like
producer.
Lady Danbury and stuff. Like, she doesn't.
Yeah, because
that's like her main title.
So they were given the land, which is in the estate, which is where Lord and Lady came from.
Yeah. But yeah,
And then
that's your hierarchy.
Hierarchy of power.
Earls are geographical based, so like Earl of Sandwich. Now I'm hungry.
Yeah.
What is the Sterling dude? He's the Earl of where? Someplace in
Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What is he?
His quiet, cold, damp place that he loves.
That I fast forwarded through a lot of their stuff. Not gonna lie, it was just boring.
They're kind of a boring couple, and I think that's what they're kind of setting up. And that gets me to my next point, looking ahead now to the future of Bridgerton. We're going to get into bold predictions pretty soon, but there are two things I wanted to touch on before we get there. Who do you want season 4 to focus on, right? Like, they've gone out of order of the books now, right? I believe book 3 was actually Benedict. They decided to do Colin instead first, but they've certainly set up 3 contenders to probably take the lead in season 4. That could be Benedict and Francesca, who seem like the most likely to. And then, you know, probably not as likely, but possible is Eloise. So I guess of those 3, who would you want to lead with? Lauren, we'll start with you.
I'd love Eloise if they did it in a Enola Holmes, like Harriet the Spy approach versus, you know, and all about her like exploring versus it automatically needing to be a love story. Right. And this is coming from like the OG like shipper of all things, but I really, really like her as a character and her dynamic with everyone else, but forcing her into a relationship where it's clear that's not what she wants, like, would ruin the show for me. Mm-hmm. I do think what they're probably going to do is not did they just gender bend the character for Francesca, but that Eloise is going to end up with Michaela instead of Michael. What did they make her final name be?
Michaela. Because,
you know, we talk about these couples, like in the book, boring guy dies, and then Francesca's like true love is Michael, his cousin, who now they have as Michaela. Like, and so since they're already not following canon, I see that they would be like, hey, you know, Eloise, is it Eloise or Eleanor?
Eloise. Like Eloise in the plaza.
That's where I was getting confused. Yeah, Eloise would, you know, go for her. I also really do love Eloise and Benedict though on the swings.
Yeah, their little like repeat session every season. It's cute.
Yeah. I don't want to see Benedict though.
I think we're getting Benedict. I'm sorry,
I think
Lauren,
that's
but
what
I
they said.
think Benedict is coming next. But
It was sloppy though this season. That's why I'm like, I don't want that next season.
Yeah, I don't like that they have given so much time to Benedict and Francesca without it being their season. Because I feel like I've seen enough of them, especially of Francesca. Like I've seen enough. Like I don't need a full season dedicated to them. But I think we're gonna get Benedict next. But I really actually like your idea of giving Eloise her own season, but letting it be just like her discovering herself, discovering the world. Which is why I wouldn't be mad at a spin-off of just that year of Eloise in Scotland and just exploring. Like I would actually really like that. So I am pro an Eloise season, but realistically, I think we're gonna get Benedict. I don't know. What do you think, Gina?
Our producer who shall go unnamed earlier put in the chat the BCU is what it should be called, the Bridgerton Cinematic Universe. So
we have a
that
chat
will
on
be,
this thing.
That will be the third.
I don't know how to access it. I
the
just see the
BC.
notifications and they're really bothering me.
Yeah, and I click it and I don't see anything.
Classic. Well, only I have seen it because I am the host. We talked a little bit at the top of the show about Penelope and Colin, right? The focus of the season, and it seemed we were all pretty much out on it. So I want to bring them back up again as we're looking ahead now too, of just was there anything you liked about them this season? And let's turn it positive, right? I feel like we put all the things we didn't like, but was there anything you liked about them? I'll start in terms of what I liked about this couple kind of going forward was, minus obviously the first two seasons where these were brand new couples, this was a pairing we had seen in the first two seasons, right? We'd obviously seen Penelope really pine for Colin. We had seen their genuine kind of friendship. It did feel like they had more chemistry in those seasons than they did this season, which was a little strange. Yeah. And it did feel like they kind of wasted a golden opportunity. But I still kind of wish they had more of that. I wish they had done a little bit more. I wish the season had been more of them like falling in love than just like falling in love by episode 4 and then having the conflict. But I did like what I liked about the show was the first 4 episodes was Colin like falling in love with Penelope. I thought that was a nice change of pace, and it didn't feel necessarily all sudden all the way. He kind of became her mentor in terms of trying to fall in love and be more ladylike, and I thought some of that stuff was the best part of the season, and the stuff that I did, especially when she's going after what's his name, Lord Debling, right? And if he becomes a little bit jealous and some of that stuff goes, I don't think it's perfectly executed, but I did enjoy the attempts of trying to do that. I just wish there had been more of that. But what do you both think? What if anything positive do you have to say about Colin and Penelope?
Crickets.
Nothing.
I was waiting for you to hear. I have
No, you go ahead, Lauren. I don't have anything yet. I'm still thinking. You go ahead, take it away.
The clothes, which is so superficial, but and it's actually a good bad thing, but I loved when it was like the trope of Penelope wanting to change her appearance to get the man. And I think I want to change my one word impression to just tropes, because that's what all this, like the whole season was, the friends into lovers, the guy helping the girl, like, and then falling for her. Like there are so many high school rom-coms about that. And then it's, she's all that, where it's like she changes her appearance and all of a sudden, like, he does. But the green dress with the black lace with her red hair, like that that was Chef's Kiss. Like that was a very iconic moment in the last episode where she does the Bridgerton or Whistledown reveal. It's a very similar look.
Right.
That I will give like props to that. At the same time though, it felt they again blew all their budget on a few moments, and the rest of the time it was a bit lackluster. Although the sisters, I actually really liked, all of their clothing too, especially at the last ball, their ball, when it's all like
The
peacocky
fancy
and just
ball.
Yeah. Other than that, like, it's again, I love the Eloise Penelope relationship arc. Like, that I think should have been the biggest. And then I can't even say like it was good music.
Right.
All right, I found what I want to say. First, well, okay, and after I say what I want to say, I also just want to give a moment for the outfits, like, because there's some fashion we have to talk about. And Arjuna, you're a boy, and I don't know if you put that in our little outline for today to talk about the fashion, but I think we would be remiss if Lauren and I didn't go off on a tangent about the fashion, because it's very significant in this season specifically.
It's true.
And so
right.
let's get to that after this. But the one thing I do appreciate about Penelope and Colin's relationship at the beginning is when Colin decided he fell in love with her, he was all in immediately. He was like, I bought us a house. We're going to get married. We've set the date. You are my wife. I love you.
He was all in her too.
He was exactly. And I really appreciated that he was like the first like person in there to not pitter patter around his emotions at this time of like discovering like, oh, I am in love and I'm committing to her. Like right now we're going to get married. Like he just went and did all those things. So I like that. I appreciated that. He floundered that after he found out Lady was down. I get it. That's a big thing. But I like that when he was in, he was all in. So that's something I can appreciate. But yeah, Arjuna, what was the thing? You already said what you liked, right?
Yeah, talk about the fashion.
Yeah.
Lauren obviously made her point about the fashion she liked. Which fashion choices
Lauren,
do you like?
Tell us.
Vogue.
Oh, me?
I think Bridgerton. And so after seeing the first 4 episodes, I did like ADHD speed watch season 1 and 2 and Queen Charlotte again. And season 1, especially with Daphne, like very boring, like Empire waist, like just like, and then Penelope and her sisters, and it's even a storyline about how obnoxious they dress. Like the mom loves colors and like these bright, obnoxious, outfits.
Homegirl should never wear yellow again.
The 3rd season, and again, like I'm not joking where I say I think that's where they blew most of their budget, because they were standout. They were noticeable. Some for the better, some for the worse. As I said with Kate, all of a sudden it was like, oh, she's back to wearing saris. It was just like, what are we doing here?
But we had our number one peacocker, Cressida Cowper, going all out with the outfits this year, with the hair, with everything.
And the red when she walked in.
She was giving it to us.
Appreciate this. Men have tuned out. Like Ravi literally is like snoring over here. But yeah,
are you just doing the blank blinks? Like, yes,
yeah. Well, actually, there is one fashion thing I want to bring up, and that is the hairpiece that the Queen had. Right? It was like
the hollow. Yeah, the hollow
like,
one.
I heard like the one thing I did read about that was it took like 2 years for them to specifically develop that look for the Queen.
They probably wanted that for Queen Charlotte, but they're like, we can't do it in time. We can't figure it out.
But like, do you think that was worth it? Do you think that was a cool look, or do you both think that was like over the top?
She's always over the top though with her hair.
That's her character, right?
I mean, all pun intended. It's I don't know how much it pushed the boundaries, so to speak, because it's like you always expect these kind of obnoxious topiary looking things, like the last episode where it literally looked like a beehive topiary like thing. It was cool, but it was for a second, and that's the most exciting thing that people are talking about. I have some concerns.
Yeah, me too. But that's our hot take on all the fashion in Bridgerton. Well, we'll do a separate pod on that.
Yeah, I was gonna. Ravi, I don't know if you're flipping me off or telling me to wrap it up. Colin,
A little bit of both.
Colin's fashion, that I will give that to at the beginning, where he came like a swashbuckling pirate, like, and you're like, and then he's like, oh, it's all the rage in Paris. And then he slowly like crept back more into like, Bridgerton vibes.
Yeah. That
The
just reminded me of
evolution.
the hot air balloon scene where Penelope couldn't have just ran to the left or to the right. She said she's
No,
going to get
because
mauled by a hot air balloon.
because
That was a
her
fun scene.
boobs, BEWBS for the outline that you're writing, like they were out.
They were boobing. They were boobing. The boobs were boobing.
She
The
was
shot,
weighted down
the
by
shot
them.
of her, the shot of her going into the little baseboard, the little like I don't know where she keeps all
To
her
get
money,
the money?
and the boob shot. Yeah, I was like, "This, why?
Yeah.
Why did we have this?" Sorry, Arjuna. I'm sure we're way off track, but there's just a couple things that I just cannot stand from this
Listen,
season.
we're talking boobs. Anybody's gonna want to pay attention to this.
They look
Speaking of
great,
boobs.
but that was quite the angle.
Speaking of boobs, right before we get into bold predictions, real quick, I just want your rankings of
The boobs.
the
Penelope
we're not
number
gonna-
one.
We're
No, I was
not,
kidding.
we're not gonna rank boobs. We're gonna rank the seasons with and Queen Charlotte, right? So we have 3 seasons of Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte. So how would
So
you
the
rank
3
it?
seasons of boobs and all the ones we've
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah,
No,
I like your
just
tangent, your connection
just the
there.
show, just the shows in general, right? So where would you rank season 3 with seasons 1, 2, and Queen Charlotte? Sahara, we'll start with you. Your ranking.
All right, I'll make it quick. Queen Charlotte at the top, Bridgerton season 2, and then there's like a hefty gap, and then I'll go Bridgerton season 3, and then Bridgerton season 1. I tried doing a rewatch of season 1, and it was actually horrible, and I didn't finish it, and I skipped forward. But that's my ranking. Lauren?
I think I would do Queen Charlotte 1, because at the time it felt very different. Honestly, 3 then 2 for me. I haven't. And I don't know if it's because they did the mid-season gap, but I rewatched season 3 part 1 a few times, like whether it's background or whatever. I have not watched really season 2 since the first time it came out, in like an ADHD like speed watch, like trying to remember everything that happened. It to me was not very memorable. But
Interesting.
Arjuna?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Queen Charlotte for sure. I think is by far the best of Bridgerton. I'm gonna go. I think probably the same as Sahara. Season 2 of Bridgerton was my favorite, top to bottom. Then I'll go season 3. I think the first half was actually pretty strong, and then it just fell off in the second half. And then season 1, I just think was just kind of it started it all, but it's just one of those things. It's kind of like the Batman Begins. You appreciate it at the time, but then it just doesn't age very well. So we go from there.
I don't understand that analogy. I'm looking at your brother. Does
That's
that
like
make
the
sense?
Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises and stuff, right? It didn't age well.
Yeah, Batman
Okay,
Begins.
Robbie
is the
said
first
yeah.
one.
So okay.
Yeah. It's when Christian Bale gained too much weight. He's like, I'm going to be Batman and I'm going to be 225. But then Christopher Nolan yelled at him and was like, no, you should get down to 185 instead. But speaking of Batman, we're going to get into our bold predictions for season 4 of Bridgerton. I'm going to start with my bold prediction. And my bold prediction is this. Season 4 of Bridgerton will focus on not 1, not 2, but 3 couples of the future. They're going to do away with the kind of singular storytelling that was really prominent in the first 2 seasons. I think they kind of soft-boxed, adopted, doing multiple storylines, and they're going to continue to do that, and they're actually going to adopt it formally and be like, yeah, we're not focusing on one couple, we're going to focus on multiple, and it's going to be about Francesca, it's going to be about Benedict, it's going to be about Eloise, and yeah, and I think that's going to cause people to dislike the show. And the second half of my bold prediction is the show will be canceled after season 4. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Wow, very bold, Arjuna.
Lauren, you're raising your hand. Would you like to go next?
I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I do have a question.
Yes.
Did you think season 3 was about one couple or two?
I mean, it's about
One and a half.
two. It's about
The Francesca storyline, the fact that they I didn't realize she existed until really this season, and because they had to recast her, and they made a lot of dedicated time to that whole storyline that I felt it was all ready to, and they took away from the pollen to dedicate towards that.
I hate that couple name, by the way. Pollen is such a dumb name.
What's your
but they didn't really
name?
have any. Who, me and Arjuna?
Yes, Arjuna.
Sajuna. Lavi. Roarin.
Yeah.
I like Roarin.
Raven.
Okay.
Yeah, don't be jealous.
Who wants to go next for their bold prediction?
I've got mine. So my bold prediction is that they're making us wait 2 years for Bridgerton season 4 because they are going to give us a spin-off series in between these two seasons. I don't know who it's going to be about or what it's going to be, but I think that next year we're going to get a Bridgerton spin-off. That's my bold prediction. And I kind of hope for it. I want it. I want it to happen.
Lauren?
The person who works in consumer products thinks the reason they're waiting is there was a lot of all of a sudden consumer products for Bridgerton for season 3 that they didn't have for 1 or even 2 in Queen Charlotte. If they're gonna wait to start putting out more product, and to Arjuna, to your point of making this the MCU or Ravi's BCU idea, are they going to try to make it bigger than just content? And whether it's, additional books or short form content or something, I do really think Netflix is going to dig in and say, how can we make the most out of this?
A choose your own adventure Netflix thing.
A Bandersnatch. This is the 3rd time today I've talked about Bandersnatch, by the way.
No.
I
don't think I've ever watched
any sleep. I'm that if they did another spinoff, and again, I do think Eloise would be a great one, because then at least we'd have some additional story around a great character that doesn't feel it needs to have a relationship piece that we've seen with all of this couples throughout all of the regular series. I also do think they're going to look at it, and I don't know if they were testing it with the first and second half of maybe shorter seasons, but having 2 a year. So you might have a more condensed 4 episodes and 4 episodes so they can keep telling the stories. I do also, and Sahara, would kind of just love your thoughts, because on social, season or episode 1 through 4, there was a lot. The other one, it felt like crickets, and I wonder if that is going to really influence how they're going to approach that. They might take a step back and be like, okay, this didn't work, let's try to save it before we, to your point, have to cancel it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was actually just telling Arjuna that the other day. I was like, I feel like Bridgerton season 3 part 2 just came and flew by, and nobody cared. They were more invested in the red carpet looks than they were about wrapping this story up. We talked about it for a couple hours on social, but ultimately there was no lasting power for it. So part 2 of a bold prediction that's not that bold is I think they're gonna nix the part 1 part 2 style for season 4 or the next season and just give it all to us once,
which is the Netflix way. That was what differentiated Netflix from everything out. It's a binge TV thing versus a Disney Plus where it's episodic and weekly. And I think it's people have short attention spans. What does that mean, Ravi? The perfect match season 2 beat.
I will say,
that show sucks.
I think to Ravi's point, Netflix has been doing the 2-part drops for some of their more popular shows. Stranger Things, the last season of Stranger Things was split into two
Oh,
parts.
yeah. 50
Was
years
it
ago.
6 months apart though? Like, wasn't it a
It
lot
was a
longer?
while. It was like a couple months, I thought.
It was a few months, yeah, and so I think it's something they're trying to do. They're trying to extend out their most popular brands. I do think it's having a bit of a negative effect for most of that stuff, and I do wonder if they're going to start changing it and just lean back into, hey, we're Netflix, we're binge dropping it. It's fascinating, all these different streamers having different strategies, right? FX, for example, with The Bear has continued to just do a full binge drop for that entire show, despite people, these last 2 years in particular being like, make this a weekly show. Like, the show is popular enough to kind of own summer, and they're like, nope. Part of the way, we want you to consume it, it's like a 10. I believe I read an article where it's like a 10-course meal. Like you are eating it one after the other, and it is like you have to experience it all at once. So it'll be fascinating to kind of see how that goes. But I think we have done it. We have come to the end of the podcast, which means it's time to answer that age-old question. Lauren, we'll start with you. Lauren, was Bridgerton season 3 good?
I know I've shit on it a lot. But I will say yes in the fact that they had built it up the franchise up in a way that I was engaged. I literally, when it dropped this, because I had seen media screeners. I also didn't realize they gave media 6 episodes. And so when it was the first half, I almost spoiled it for a lot of people because I thought I didn't realize most people hadn't seen the other 2. But I was literally waiting for them to drop to see how it ended. And I watched it again a couple times. I think in rewatching is when I saw a lot of the issues. But I will say it was good in that it was captivating. It was still new content, and I would still definitely watch a season 4. But there are a lot of y'all, you got some notes. So
Okay.
Do I get to ask now?
You ask Sahara now.
I've learned.
It goes in a circle.
Choose you. I can choose who I want.
No, because if you ask me, it's
Sahara.
a closed loop.
This whole power tripping on being the host, Arjuna. Sahara, was Bridgerton season 3 good?
Yes, it was good. And like you, Lauren, I have many negative things to say about this season, but ultimately I was sitting on the couch ooh. I was really invested in their relationship and in Eloise and Cressida's friendship and a lot of elements that I was actually really invested in. And I did have fun with it, especially the first part. And I think the first part was strong enough for me to say it was good. Yeah. Bridgerton season 3 was good. So, Arjuna, was Bridgerton season 3 good?
I've been around for a long time now. I'm in my 3rd decade.
Okay, Grandpa.
And as I've gotten older, I've learned many lessons about myself. I used to be a completionist. I used to really subjugate myself to watching every single thing of something. Infamously, I watched most of the Arrowverse. Christian and Ravi, my former brothers who betrayed me.
The Walking Dead.
Who used to make fun of me for watching that show, and I stayed with it for a long time, and I'm at a point right now with Bridgerton where I'm at a little bit of a crossroads because I'm going to say that the show this season was not good. I think there were a lot of flaws to it that have taken away my excitement for it, where I really have to consider when the next season comes out, do I want to invest my time to watch the show, or are there other things to watch? And I'm not sure.
As your wife, Arjuna, I will say you will be investing the time to watch this show, regardless.
That was my thing. Arjuna, you're not the target audience for the show.
Yeah, you're not.
It is meant to be wives are watching. I love actually all of the like TikToks and Instas of like, you know, when your husband casually is watching Bridgerton while you're watching it and they like get further invested. Like it's not meant for you necessarily.
That's true, but I will say, because I wasn't interested in the show when it came out, but it was something like Sahara watched and kind of it was on, and I was like doing other stuff, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like interesting, and I was like, oh, I'll check it out, and then I kind of got invested, and I think it like peaked at Queen Charlotte, and now it's a little bit on the downturn. So,
Sahara, teach me your magic.
I think
you know, I did successfully get Arjuna into a couple seasons of Love Island, so I'll write a handbook about how to get your man interested in your
because Ravi has not seen one episode of Bridgerton, except he, like a parent, comes in awkwardly when it's like one of the like sex scenes and there's like TNA everywhere.
God,
Ravi's like, what are you watching?
So awkward.
Classic. That's going to do it for us here at Was It Good? You know, you can find us in all the usual spots. You know, we're on YouTube at youtube.com/wasitgood. TikTok, Instagram at wasitgoodpod. Twitter at wasitgood. You can check out our website at wasitgood.info. Follow us on
at Borderline
Spotify,
Millennials on
Apple.
TikTok for cool Bridgerton content too.
But wait, Arjuna, isn't there a Was It Good newsletter coming soon?
The newsletter is coming soon. Thank you for reminding the audience, Lauren. Krishna is hard at work at it. That is actually why he couldn't make this podcast. He was really excited to talk about Bridgerton. Our next podcast,
when you guys say
next...
soon, it's the same as Stranger Things saying, you know, this new season's coming soon.
Yeah, when all the kids are on AARP because they're retiring soon. That's when the show will come out. But we'll have new podcasts every Saturday. Stay tuned to see what we're talking about, because maybe we don't even know what we're talking about, or maybe we do. Maybe we have the whole year planned, or maybe we don't. But until next time, I'm Arjuna, joined by Sahara and Lauren. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep it good.
Was It Good? Out.